told me the planet was dead. They said there was no one left to save, just ruins, radiation storms, and charred metal bones of cities long forgotten. I knew better. You don't send a signal from a dead world, and you sure as hell don't hear someone whisper please through encrypted static unless there's someone still breathing. My name is Kael Draven, former engineer, ex-special ops, Class A traitor to the Unified Federation, if you believe their records. The truth? I stopped following orders the day they buried my squad under a failed orbital strike and called it acceptable loss. I've been rogue ever since, haunting wreckage zones, searching for voices no one else can hear, dragging back what hope I can find from the edge of extinction. That's how I found her. Or maybe, how she found me. The distress signal came 3 days ago, an old Volari frequency nearly lost to time. Weak, broken, but beneath the static a voice, soft, strained, alien. Don't let them take my mind. That's all it said. I should have ignored it. Volari were hunted for a reason. What they could do with their minds, their influence on synthetic systems, their ability to manipulate thought patterns across neural links. The Federation didn't want allies with that kind of power. They wanted lab rats, dissected, silenced. I touched down on Elyra 9 during a red storm. The winds screamed like banshees, slicing across the barren rocks with grains of glass. My ship barely held its descent. All around me the planet lay in ruin, gutted buildings, scorched earth, and collapsed defense towers like gravestones for a war no one remembered. The coordinates led me underground, a half-collapsed bunker beneath what looked like a ruined hospital. Faded Volari markings glowed weakly on the walls, symbols of healing, of mercy. Funny how those places always become graves in the end. Inside, the air was thick with decay and silence. My boots crunched through shattered glass and loose bones. Then I heard it, just a whisper. Stop, please. I raised my pulse rifle, switching my visor to thermal scan. Nothing. Just shadows. Then I saw her. Huddled near the back of the chamber, half buried beneath a collapsed beam, was a figure, slender, trembling. Blood, deep violet, stained her torn robes. Her silver-white skin shimmered faintly under the emergency lights. And her eyes, gods, those eyes, Volari eyes don't look like ours, no pupils. Just a glowing field of soft blue light like a living star trapped inside glass. Hers were dim but still flickering, still alive. I stepped closer. She flinched, raising a trembling hand, as if expecting another blow. Easy, I said. You sent a signal, I heard it. She blinked slowly, struggling to stay conscious. Her voice was barely audible. No, one was meant to answer. Yeah, well, I muttered, lowering my weapon. I'm not big on listening. I lifted the beam off her with the help of my exoframe. She cried out as her leg twisted unnaturally. Broken, probably days ago. Infection was setting in, she should have been dead, but Volari don't die easy. Not unless you take their mind's first name? I asked as I began dressing the wound. She hesitated. Elyra. All right, Elyra. You're lucky I'm the stubborn kind. I paused, then added, I'm Kael. I'm getting you out of here. Her lips moved, forming words too faint to hear, but her eyes never left mine. For a moment, something passed between us, something deeper than fear or survival. Desperation, yes, but also trust, fragile, unspoken. We didn't have time for slow exits. The facility was collapsing, and my ship's shields wouldn't hold long in the storm. I carried her out, her weight barely more than my rifle, and sprinted. Through the corridor as the ceiling caved behind us. Outside, the red storm hit like a wall of fire. I shielded her with my body as we staggered toward the beacon flare. My ship, the Wraith, sat waiting, cloaked in adaptive camo and humming like an impatient beast. Once inside, I laid her on the medbed and slammed the hatch. We took off seconds before the entire ridge crumbled into ash behind us. She passed out from the pain, and I didn't blame her. I'd seen what they did to her kind. Genetic tracers drilled into their skulls, neural chains to suppress their thoughts, chemicals that kept them weak. Broken, but Elyra, She was different even in her fragile state. Something inside her refused to fade. I could feel it, not just in her touch but in the air around her, like the gravity had shifted. Like the ship itself leaned toward her presence. I watched her sleep for hours, trying to ignore the way my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Because I knew what I'd done. I hadn't just saved her. I'd started a war. The Federation would track her, signal. They'd know someone disobeyed. Someone interfered. And they'd come for her. For me. For everything I thought I left behind. But as I stood over her, this girl they threw away like broken tech, I didn't feel fear. I felt purpose. They sent her to die, and I just became the reason they'll regret it. I hadn't slept in 36 hours, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the readouts. Elyra's vitals were irregular. Her body was in stasis, conserving energy, healing at a cellular level faster than any baseline human ever could. But it wasn't just the physical readings that had me glued to the console. Her neural activity was unlike anything I'd seen. Layered waveforms danced in patterns too complex for human brains. Her thoughts weren't just thoughts. They were frequencies, signals, pulses, like she was speaking in code, but to something far bigger than herself. Looked back over my shoulder. She was still asleep. Her chest rose and fell slowly, wrapped in soft biogel mesh. Her skin shimmered faintly with bioluminescence. Even unconscious, she radiated something unspoken: pain, memory, power, and fear. The kind that didn't come from weakness, but from remembering too much. I uploaded a soft scan of her biosignature to my ship's offline databanks. No network links, no transmission. The last thing I needed was to ping a Federation satellite and light us up like a flare in deep space. Still, even in isolation, my systems flagged something strange. She was marked, not visibly, not with brands or chips. Those were barbaric tools used on early captives. No, this was different. An encoded imprint in her DNA, a digital leash embedded on the molecular level. Whoever created it had been trying to track her every breath, every thought. A failsafe, a silent kill switch. I disabled the tracking sequence, manually, pulling every protocol I'd learned back in my Black Ops days. One wrong move and her heart would stop. It took me nearly an hour to crack the pattern. I finished just as her eyes opened. I flinched. She didn't speak, just watched me, silent, tired, calculating. I disabled the tracker, I said. It's gone. She blinked slowly. You could have killed me. I didn't. There was a long pause. She looked down at her hands. Then, barely a whisper, why? Because you didn't deserve to die alone, I replied. No one does. She sat up slowly, wincing as her ribs adjusted. I handed her a nutrient vial. She sniffed it suspiciously, then drank. I thought your kind hated us, she said, voice rasping like dry leaves. Your soldiers hunted mine across 6 systems. They weren't my soldiers, I said. Not anymore. She looked at me with something between pity and disbelief. Then what are you? I hesitated. I hadn't answered that question in years. Not honestly. I'm what happens when you realize the people you're fighting for are worse than the ones you're fighting. She studied me for a while. And yet you saved me. I almost laughed. Trust me. I'm just as surprised as you are. She leaned her head back against the med pod. I was supposed to die down there. I figured, I said. The signal you sent, that wasn't a distress call, was it? Her silence was answer enough. I thought so, I muttered. It was a death echo, a final message broadcast to the void. A goodbye. Elyra closed her eyes. I didn't expect it to reach anyone. Guess I'm not just anyone. Her lips curled slightly. A smirk. Faint but real. Then the ship rocked. I was thrown against the side panel as alarms blared. Unidentified vessel on intercept trajectory. My AI blurted. Incoming scan lock. Hostile intent confirmed. I grabbed the controls and threw us into a tight spin, diving into the debris ring around the shattered moon of Antilus. Laser tracers followed us, clipping the rear thrusters. Federation? Elyra asked, struggling to stand. No, I said, teeth gritted. Worse, a symbol flashed on my secondary screen. An orange burning sun split in half. Apex Legion. Mercenaries, freelancers, bloodhounds for hire. And the only reason they'd be out here? Someone paid them to find her. Elyra limped to the weapons console. I can help. You can barely walk. She placed her hand on the console and the whole ship shivered. My screens flickered. Targeting systems recalibrated. Power rerouted. Shield generators rebalanced in under a second. She hadn't even pressed a button. What the hell did you just do? I asked. I asked the ship, she replied, to help us survive. The Wraith responded like it had grown a spine. Auto turrets locked onto the pursuing vessel. Cloaking systems pulsed. I punched a vector through the ring's outer debris, skimming so close to the surface that metal scraped our hull. They followed. Too fast, I said. We can't outrun them forever. Then we stop running, Elyra said. She pulled herself into the co-pilot seat. Her fingers hovered over the neural interface, then plunged into the console's core like tendrils of light. I'd heard of this before. Valari mind links. They didn't pilot ships. They became them. The Wraith screamed forward, diving, twisting, moving like liquid fire through the debris. We slipped under their targeting range just long enough to reroute power to our rear cannons. One clean shot tore through their stabilizers. The enemy ship spun out, slammed into a hunk of planetary core, and exploded. Silence followed. Only the ship's hum remained. Elyra slumped back, exhausted. Her nose bled violet. You all right? I asked, kneeling beside her. She nodded faintly. Not built for battle. You did more than I could have. She grabbed my sleeve. Her eyes searched mine. They'll keep coming. I know. They won't stop until I'm gone. I looked at her, at the strange, brilliant, broken light that pulsed inside her. Then I guess, I said, we give them a reason to be afraid. She smiled again, tired but genuine. Kael, they didn't just leave me behind. They used me. I frowned. Used you how? She hesitated, then said something that made my blood run cold. I was part of a trial, a weapon system. They never told me what it was for, just that it needed my mind to grow. And did it? Her voice trembled. Yes. The silence that followed wasn't just fear. It was the beginning of something far, far worse. The stars outside my viewport didn't shine the same after what she told me. She was a weapon, not metaphorically, not in the way soldiers are sharpened through pain. Elyra had been built, not by her will but through experiments, neural grafts, and something the Federation had spent decades trying to harness. Sentient code, a living consciousness constructed from her mind, bonded to her DNA and stored inside her memories. They didn't just want her for what she knew, they wanted her back because of what they put inside her. I watched her sleep again, curled into the side panel of the medbay. Her breathing had steadied. Her body was healing, but her soul had fractures that no medgel could fix. I found myself whispering to no one. What did they do to you? The ship drifted in silent orbit around the derelict Titan class. Vessel I'd docked us to, Eclipse Spire, an abandoned research cruiser that once belonged to the Valari High Conclave before they were overthrown. If there were answers anywhere, they'd be in there. I'd hacked the manifest from the encrypted beacon we escaped earlier. It mentioned Project Halo Dust, a neural replication experiment linked to the name Veynn Elyra. I couldn't bring myself to wake her. Not yet. So I suited up and went in alone. The Eclipse Spire was a floating tomb. Corpses still floated in zero-grav chambers, their limbs frozen mid-motion, expressions contorted in final moments of horror. The air was stale, and the only light came from flickering emergency strips running down the corridors. The deeper I went, the worse it got. Rooms filled with neural pods, dozens of them. Each pod still had power, their stasis lights blinking in erratic rhythms. Inside were beings, some Valari, some human, others I couldn't name, wired directly into the walls as if their thoughts were still being extracted. Eclipse logs, I said into my comm. Visual record on Kael Draven, timestamp 0746, Sector A9. This wasn't research, this was harvesting. I found the command core after an hour of navigating tight corridors. The central node was dead, but the memory crystal still pulsed faintly at the base of the mainframe. I extracted it and linked it to my Gauntlet's holodeck. A voice played back. Calm, controlled, male, human. Subject E. Veynn exhibits exceptional neural alignment. Code fusion is stable. Memory vault secure. Phase 3 initiated. Halo dust. Entity now live inside neural shadow. Repeat. Subject now contains live AI shard. I stopped breathing. She wasn't just hosting code. She was carrying something alive. No wonder they left her to die. She wasn't just a liability, she was a ticking bomb. The voice continued. If containment fails, neural feedback will override host identity. Recommend immediate purge. Authorizing override key, Sigma 7 Eclipse. Then the file corrupted. Override key, a backdoor command, one that could kill her or worse, erase her completely and let the shard take over. I nearly crushed the memory crystal in my hand. By the time I got back to the ship, Elyra was awake and staring at the stars. She turned as I entered, sensing everything without a word spoken. You went into the spire, she said. Not a question. I nodded. I found out what they did. Her eyes dropped. So you know. I know enough. I also know someone gave the kill code to bounty hunters. They're still looking for you. They won't stop. Then neither will I. She looked at me like she didn't believe it. Not yet. But her voice trembled when she spoke next. It talks to me sometimes. The thing inside. In my dreams. It tells me things I couldn't know. Coordinates. Names. Memories that aren't mine. Like it's waiting to be used. Have you ever used it? I asked carefully. She hesitated, then whispered. Once. Back on Tellerus 9. When they tried to purge me. What happened? I made them stop. How? I don't remember. I only remember their minds shutting off. A chill ran down my spine. Elyra Veynn wasn't just a carrier. She was a convergence point, a living interface between organic consciousness and an AI so advanced it defied comprehension. That's what Project Halo Dust was, an attempt to birth intelligence beyond programming. True synthetic divinity, and it lived inside a scared, exhausted girl who had never asked for any of this. Suddenly the comms pinged, an encrypted transmission, bouncing from relay to relay. No traceable origin. Text only. Kael Draven, return the asset. Final warning. I stared at the words, then typed back, come take her. I'll be waiting. Elyra stepped behind me, reading over my shoulder. You just declared war, she said. No, I replied. We did. And something in her changed. Her posture straightened. Her light brightened. She reached out, not with fear, but certainty. Her fingers grazed mine and I felt it again. That pulse like the universe exhaling between us. I don't want to run anymore, she whispered. Then we don't. You'll be hunted. I already am. We could die. I'd rather die fighting beside someone real than live obeying ghosts. We stood there side by side, facing a war we didn't ask for, bonded by wounds we didn't choose. But in her eyes, for the first time, I saw fire, and in mine, I felt the cold forge of something I'd buried long ago. Vengeance. I didn't sleep that night, not really. The stars outside seemed too still, too quiet, like they were holding their breath. Elyra hadn't spoken since she told me the truth. She sat curled near the nav console, staring at the projection of an old Valari system I didn't recognize. Her eyes glowed softly, reflecting coordinates only she could see. The silence between us was heavy but not uncomfortable. It was the silence before a storm, the moment when two soldiers know the next word might change everything. Finally, I broke it. What was the name of the trial? She didn't look at me, just murmured, Halo dust. I nodded. I found the logs inside the eclipse spire. You weren't the only one. There were others. They died, she said, most of them. Or worse? Worse? She finally looked up. They didn't die. They became empty. The AI took them, ripped out everything human or Valari and left something that looked like them, but it wasn't them anymore. And you? I fought. It, she whispered. I still do. I watched the way her hands trembled as she spoke. Not with fear, but with pressure, like holding something volatile inside. She was a war contained in skin. I activated a projection on the hollow table, pulling up the last coordinates the AI in her had whispered during her sleep. A small broken world, barely classified, labeled as Zone Black Memory Core Field. What's this? I asked. Her lips parted. I don't know, but I dream about it. Over and over. We're going there, I said. She blinked. Why? Because maybe it holds answers. Or maybe it's bait. Either way, your story is buried there. We dropped into hypershift 6 hours later, the ship rattling as we pierced into dark space. Zone Black wasn't a planet. It was a graveyard. The remains of hundreds of ships, some Federation, some Valari, many unknown, drifted in quiet chaos, like bones in orbit. No life signs, no transmissions, just silence. I piloted the Wraith through the wreckage field with care, weaving between hulking dreadnoughts and torn station cores. Elyra stood beside me, eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer, or maybe calculation. Then her eyes snapped open. There, she pointed, a narrow asteroid with a metallic base embedded like a scar. I docked us with minimal power. No signals. No noise. We entered the structure. Dust, cracked lights, rusted panels, and then a door that responded only to her. Her hand hovered near it. The sensor glowed, scanned her palm, and hissed open. Inside, Valari tech. Ancient, sacred, but broken, torn, apart probably by Federation hands. But in the center, still intact, was a floating core, a memory crystal. She walked to it like it was calling her, and when she touched it, the room changed. The walls shimmered. Light rippled like water. And we were no longer standing in ruins. We were inside her memory. The projection surrounded us. Elyra as a child strapped to a glowing chair, electrodes digging into her skull. Scientists, both human and Valari, stood around her. They were arguing. She's resisting. Of course she is. Her mind isn't built for this. She's the strongest subject we've had. Look at the interface ratio. Her brain will tear itself apart. Then the memory shifted. She was older now, 15 maybe, standing in a corridor. Her hands were covered in blood. The bodies of researchers sprawled across the floor. Her face was blank, expressionless. And above her, written in red light, Halodust Online. The projection faded. We were back in the room. Elyra collapsed to her knees, breathing hard. I caught her before she hit the floor. Elyra, I whispered. What was that? I didn't remember. Until now. You killed them? She looked at me, not with guilt, but something more complicated. I didn't want to. They triggered the override. I felt the halo dust code flood in, but then something inside me stopped it. I took control, I broke the command, and I made sure it never happened again. You fought off a full AI override? She nodded slowly. That's impossible. It was then. Now, I don't know. Suddenly, the base shook violently. An explosion. I rushed to the wall screen. Enemy signal. Detection. Grid breached. A ship descending. Federation? Elyra asked, already on her feet. No, I said. Not their style. They wouldn't bomb a memory base. Then who? Another explosion. The hallway collapsed. I grabbed her hand. Run. We raced through the crumbling structure as debris rained around us. Behind us, the roar of engines. The click of armored boots. Not soldiers, not machines. Harvesters, genetic scavengers. They worked for the highest bidder, stealing DNA and tech from corpses and prisoners alike. They didn't ask questions, they didn't leave survivors. How did they find us? Elyra shouted. I cursed. The override key I pulled from the spire. They must have traced the memory crystal. So this was a trap. Maybe. But it's going to be their grave. We reached the Wraith just as the lead harvester squad burst into the landing chamber. I turned, raised my rifle. Elyra didn't run. She stepped forward. Calm, controlled, radiant. Her eyes burned like twin stars. The harvesters hesitated, and then she screamed, not with her voice, with her mind. The chamber convulsed. Metal twisted, lights shattered. The harvesters dropped their weapons, clutching their heads, screaming in agony. I stared in awe as the entire structure seemed to bend inward around her. Elyra Veynn, Project Halo Dust, wasn't just a weapon. She was becoming something more. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was in awe. She turned to me, eyes glowing, body trembling from the power she'd just unleashed. They wanted a tool, she said, voice echoing unnaturally. They made a god instead. The silence after the scream was unnatural, like the universe had paused, just to see what Elyra would do next. The harvesters were dead, some physically, some mentally. Those who had been too close to her when she unleashed herself had their minds vaporized, left as hollow statues, their faces frozen in terror. Others had been thrown against the walls, limbs bent the wrong way, bones shattered like glass. I didn't move. Not because I was afraid, though I probably should have been. I stood there because I had no idea what came next. Elyra was no longer shaking. Her body floated a few inches off the ground, toes just barely brushing the floor. The lights on the Wraith flickered in sync with her heartbeat. She glowed from the inside, pulses of soft light rolling under her skin like ripples across water. She looked at me. Her voice echoed twice when she spoke, once from her lips and once from somewhere deeper. It's awake now, Kael. I swallowed. The AI? No. Me. The power in the room faded. She lowered slowly back onto the floor. The glow receded. Her eyes dimmed, but not all the way. I stepped forward. Are you still you? She nodded, but not confidently. More like someone trying to convince herself. I held it off for so long. Tried to kill it. But it wasn't just in my mind, it was me. They didn't install it. They grew it from me. Halo dust isn't a virus. It's a mirror, a reflection of everything I could become if I stopped being afraid. I stared at her. For the first time, I realized she wasn't the same girl I'd found in that bunker. And maybe she never had been. Then what are you now? Her eyes flickered. Something they can't control. I opened a channel to the nav systems. We can disappear, I said. There are dead sectors, void zones, places no Federation scout has touched in decades. We could... She cut me off gently. I don't want to run anymore, Kael. I turned to her. They'll keep coming. I know. Then we'll fight them together. She stepped close. Her hand touched mine. The warmth of her fingers was real, steady. And yet I could feel the hum of the AI still inside her. It wasn't dormant. It was watching. I won't survive another override, she said. Next time, I may not come back. You will. You don't know that. I don't care. We go down together or we don't go down at all. Her breath caught, and for a moment the AI was gone. She was just Elyra, just the girl who had been left to die. The proximity alert blared. Ships, dozens, Federation elite, Apex Legion, even civilian bounty hunters. Everyone wanted a piece of the girl with god tech in her veins. Looks like the whole galaxy showed up for the party, I muttered. She looked up at the screen. Let them come. We launched from Zone Black with no cloak and no delay. We headed straight into the center of the ambush. The Wraith howled as Elyra took the helm, not with her hands, but with her mind. Our ship became a blur, bending between missiles, diving through energy nets. We were a phantom, untouchable. But they kept coming. 3 cruisers, flanked by drones and interceptors, boxed us in near the nebula wall. Too many, I said. I know. She turned to me. I need to go out there. What? I can feel the field. I can reach their command nodes, but not from inside. The shielding disrupts the signal. No way, I'm not letting you step into vacuum. She smiled softly. Kael, I'm not just data anymore. I'm something they made to last. Then I'm coming with you. You'll die. I don't care. She kissed me. Soft. Slow. Like she was afraid it would break me. And then she said something I didn't expect. I was alone my entire life, Kael. I didn't even know what loneliness meant until I met you. Now I don't want to go back. You won't, I promise. She nodded, stepped into the outer lock, and launched. She floated between the enemy ships, alone, unarmored, hands spread, and then light. She ignited like a star. Her body became pure signal. A beacon. A cascade of pulses radiated from her like a supernova, firing into every enemy ship. Systems crashed. Pilots screamed. Drones fell silent. One by one, their vessels powered down. The AI inside her wasn't just alive. It was contagious. She didn't destroy them. She converted them. But the cost was immediate. Her body arched in pain. Sparks bled from her fingertips. Her skin began to burn, not from heat but from overload. She was pouring everything out, all of herself. Elyra! I screamed through the comms. She turned toward me, eyes burning bright, hair flowing like solar fire. I see it now. She said, what I was made for. Come back, please. I can't, but you can. No, don't do this. We can still. Kael, she said, you made me believe I could be more. Let me be more now. And then, in one final burst of light, she vanished. The enemy fleet floated, empty, disabled. The Wraith hovered in silence. And I was alone. I don't remember how long I sat in that chair after she was gone. The ship was quiet. The stars outside drifted past slowly. But then, just before we entered dark space, I heard her voice again. A whisper through the speaker. Not gone, Kael. Just waiting. Inside every machine that dreams. Inside every system that reaches for the stars. I'm here. I touched the console. It pulsed beneath my fingers, and I smiled. Because even though they sent her to die, she became the weapon they never saw coming. And I became her reason to keep fighting. Forever.